Alright, so has everyone got a 3Studio Max open? No? They don't have it on P-Lab? Yeah, it should be under Autodesk 3Studio Max 2014. You tried on the not your Mac machine? Alright, so if you guys go ahead, if you got 3Studio Max open, we can just put a plane down. 3Studio Max, this create tab over here. And it should default to standard primitives on this drop down. There's a bunch of options, but the standard one will have a plane object. Click on it, just click and drag. And you should have this tab up here, this populate tab. So that'll be the next thing we'll look at. You guys see that on there? Say populate right here. So there's this little show full ribbon. If you have that one selected, it'll bring down this large bar here. See if I get the scale right. So has everyone got the plane down and then got that big area open? So you get a couple options here. One thing you can do is create idle areas, right? So you'll drag either like a irregular border shape is the first one on the left, more rectangular shape is the one that's highlighted right now. And then a circular shape, then you can kind of join shapes together. So that would just stick a bunch of characters down on the ground within that area. And it'll automatically try to populate them. There's some sliders on there for if you say you want groups of 2s and 3s only, or individual people. But it'll just basically try to fill that space up with little characters like this automatically for you. So you can see that's a fairly large space. Let me check my scale here real quick. Okay, yeah, so I'm 100 feet by, just for that plane, so they're at a kind of an odd scale. You can kind of see you put these two people and they're facing one another automatically. But if I click on that, I can kind of increase the density here. It's got a couple sliders in the modify tab. Excuse me? Okay, so I guess I'll clear that part. So you'll click on one of these, right? Like, let's say I'll do a circular area here too. And you'll just click and drag. And you should get a bunch of kind of icons, circles with blue dots. Right, so those are your people until you kind of change the settings the way you want. You go ahead and I'll delete this other one. My people will stay there. So I've put this shape on here. Basically within that boundary, it's giving me a little preview of how many people are going to be in there. And if you go to the Modify tab, you've got this couple sliders for how dense you want them to be. You prefer single people or groups. You want your groups to be 3 or 2 people. And then male, female, differentiation, with some orientation, things like that. So you can basically turn those up, and it should give you a preview of little circles with, I don't know if blue and red are probably the gender differences, and then the circle is standing around all facing one another. So I've got a circular area. There's also a create flow that's at far left. And so this will let you like kind of click continuously and draw like a line. And this is where rather than people standing there, you'll actually have people walking through that space. So I'm going to say create flow, and I'm just going to start clicking. And then if I right click, it'll sort of end, I think, the flow. It looks like the width is a little crazy. So I've got walking people, and I think these lanes, these are the lanes that they'll walk in, so I can increase the spacing, at least to a certain degree, but it looks like basically the initial width is kind of crazy. Increase the density again, and then whether they hug left or right. So basically I put these two objects in there that put these kind of temporary preview items of what, where they're going to be walking, what they're going to look like, or how they'll be clustered together based on the parameters you set here. And so the final thing is to simulate all this. So if you run simulate, you see that bottom bar, it'll sit there and say it's creating 82 idlers, and then probably some sort of number of people walking, 198 pedestrians. Right, so this is instantly dumping 200 people in your scene, and you don't have to do any manual placing. If you have geometry, it'll actually, I think, follow the slopes and stuff like that if you draw it on there. And we'll see what the results look like here in a second. All right, so here's Tech Green, noon, right, and then all of a sudden they're all walking there. Right, so these are all essentially, even though it's using a plugin, you can kind of say, okay, that's fine, I'm done with this, creating these flows, but you should be able to even zoom in, and these are their low resolution gaming quality models. They have a download that you can download to create the higher res models and get higher res models, but if you wanted a couple people walking, you should be able to just export these things out to, probably convert them to a mesh and then export them out to Rhino and bring them in. And they probably have unwrapped textures and everything.
If you did OBJ, it would actually come into Rhino with all the image.
I believe so, yeah, probably the materials, if you tell it to export the materials.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to use this, we can kind of go through. I've done some tests early, but when this was in beta type thing, I did some initial tests to get stuff out, so it might be a little different now, but you should be able to go sample the material on these objects and see what you guys learned about, which is unwrapped faces and bodies, right? So there's arms, legs, hands, eyes, face, all in one texture, photoshopped to death, reprojected onto this mesh. Right, so yeah, if you brought this in, applied the mesh and the material, it will automatically kind of be ready to go for you to have. I don't know if you guys don't want texture, you can just have gray characters like you've got already, but this is an easy way for you guys to kind of maybe move on from that one if it was limiting to you and you wanted people to be standing looking. And so what we'll do next, this is sort of the easy button version of it. I wish I had this for the past 10 years of all the stuff I've had to do. So we'll do the next step, which is if you want to do your own custom character, especially for our final project or studio. Simulate, generate, once you do all the settings, it'll generate the characters. Is it not doing it? So it's a little quirky on scale, right? So if your scale's off, it might not be generating them properly. Yeah, so that means that the space you're in, the character is probably too big for that space. Yeah. So it's just a scale issue. And if you do run into that and you don't want to figure it out, I know none of you guys ever go to this, but there's this thing called Help, Autodesk Help. So there's here, it'll pull up a web page. I think they switched basically to a web page one. So this is a common problem. There's whatever your scale is versus whatever this plugin is using to generate them. Like you might be in inches and it's in feet, right? And you drew a 12 foot in inches area, and that's basically a foot for the characters. So there's you guys have done Grasshopper scripting. There's also MaxScript language. So you can take a command like this here, which is just saying the populate plugin real world scale equals some number, right? So you got to kind of guess the number if you're having trouble and they're not showing up. So let's just say like half the default size. You can just Control C on that. Now all you got to do is search populate and scroll down. This is sort of the help on what I'm showing you, but probably a lot more detailed. You can do intersecting paths, all that, but this is where the one thing you might run into, which it sounded like Brock and David ran into, right, is just to change the scale. So you copy that, You get back to 3D Studio Max. Over here in the bottom left is their Max Script listener. So you can kind of paste in text there and hit OK, enter, and it'll run it. Basically, it's like a Rhino, right? Almost like a type-in command. This gives you access to like kind of the coded Max Script language. And you do that, and it'll change that real scale for this plugin from 1 to 0.5. That doesn't work. You try 0.1, that doesn't work, or you get 10,000 characters, and you need to go up on numbers, right? So you're just scaling up and down this plugin, if it's working or not working. And I can kind of work with individuals. Does that work on yours? You try it? Okay. So it should just change in the scale on this plugin. So if you weren't getting characters to show up, that's your route there. And I think Rhino's added this. They've got the idea of animation now, but this Max has had it for a real long time. The bottom here is your time scale. Right, so this is the number of frames. So if you want to see them walking, you can kind of grab and drag that. It's almost like a media player. Play button. There's a play button here too. A lot of times it'll default to kind of funny box previews. All right, so this populates. Does that seem like that might help some of you with your studio populating spaces and having more people not having to hand place them everywhere? Maybe. All right, so I'll introduce a real quick sort of what's underlying all this. And I'll try not to do... I'll probably jump ahead a little bit, but I'll just give you guys the idea of like box modeling. If you did, or you wanted to create your own character, pose them a particular way, and you don't have your own 3D model skinned, I'll sort of introduce what he sort of mentioned, which is polygonal box modeling, right? And all that means is you pretty much start with a box and you end up with a human character at the end, just through kind of mesh editing routines. And this is a good thing to introduce as far as an alternative to modeling something with what you're already probably used to, which is Rhino and the way it constructs things. Mesh modeling and polygonal modeling is a very different kind of mentality, but it can be really helpful and a lot faster than your other ways of modeling. So with those characters, all those characters walking, what's underlying all of them is this biped character. And you can add one of these. This gets really kind of deep and painful, but this is the same area where you add the daylight system for Mental Ray, right? So you guys remember we created the daylight system. It's the same sort of thing. It's a more complicated system in here. So I'm going to go to biped here and just click and drag. And then I'll hit Z and I'll zoom in to what that is. So now I've got this little skeleton here. And I don't know, did Clint show Maya? Maya's skeleton reading system? Is that what he showed, or was it ZBrush? It was Maya? Okay, so Maya's got its own kind of bone system. You can create your own bones and have like the kinematic kind of hookups to them. If you move the hand, everything below moves. You can do forward kinematics or inverse kinematics. Most animation stuff's built off of it. This biped character is sort of a historical one that you can load motion capture on, and we'll go ahead and do that. So typically when you create something in 3D Studio Max and you want to modify it afterwards, you go to that Modify tab. This is like the one object, and that's not the case. Instead you go to this little Motion Wheel tab, and that's where you'll get to all the properties of this biped, and this is where there's all sorts of scary looking things. I'll just introduce a couple of them real quick. So I can move this guy around. You see here, let me, all right, so here's I just switched the select scene into like displaying the children. So this will show you kind of how the hierarchy is working as far as these objects are. So right now I have this biped 01 selected. And you can see all the parts of the body are sort of have a hierarchy linked back to that root node, which is typically in the pelvis. So basically, if I move this, the whole body moves, right? So, but if I move the hand, just the arm will move, right? So you've got this kind of skeleton type thing. If I move it backwards or forwards or in, the elbow should bend in. So I can do this kind of posing maneuver. You know, if you guys have a character you want interacting with your sculpture in a certain way, you could basically take the skeleton and pose them however you want to be exactly interacting. And this could be linked back to a mesh of a character that you end up rendering, but this is how you end up controlling and posing the character. Does that make sense a little bit? So this is all set up and ready for you to kind of experiment with. If we go back to this kind of main, see this kind of diamond shape? That'll get you back to like the core object. It should be bit 01. You can rename it, and everything downstream will rename, so I can call him first person. And then everything downstream of that should have got renamed. No, maybe there's another mode to do that. But we can call them whatever to make it easy to select. Let's see, I'm going to find out exactly how tall this guy is. So there's a couple modes. By default, you guys, is anyone create one of these in here? Yep, so you guys put one in. So there's this biped panel here. There's something called figure mode, and this is where you can kind of define the structure, how tall he is. Right, you've got a type in value. If you go, so you can see how that button's blue. I can toggle it on and off. So figure mode is going to allow me to go in and make some structural changes to this character. But it won't let me like edit. If I want to do keyframing and whatnot, I don't want to do it while it's in figure mode. This is sort of like I want to edit how tall he is and how many fingers he has, and if he has a tail or not. Right? So most of the bend links and copy and paste you don't want to mess with, but when you're in figure mode, structure is something that you can edit. And I can say I want him to be 6 feet tall, and then all of a sudden he should drop down to about that height. Right? So if you're trying to get scale in here, this will let you edit it. Let's see, I can say I want 5 toes, 5 fingers, and you'll see it'll actually get fingers on there. So it's like a parametric model here. So if I want 3 fingers on them, I can control it. So usually don't mess with this stuff. Like 1 finger and 1 toe is all right, unless you're doing really close-up animation. You're going to hand keyframe the hands to do some grabbing motion, or you want to point a finger. You can add these things afterwards to it, but this is just the thing that's going to, I haven't seen the short thumb yet either, that's interesting. It's grayed out, so. But you can add things like a tail, so if you wanted to have a tail out the back and move it, you should be able to add those things. And I think they used to have like, okay, so yeah, there's a couple presets of like visually what it looks like as well, so just be aware that you're going to make those changes in figure mode. If you want to make those changes, and then once you take them out of figure mode, you can start doing things like posing them and getting them in a particular pose. So I'm just going to move him to 0, 0 on X and Y, just so he's centered in the scene. And basically what you're going to want to do is, like, say you wanted to model real quick from a box a character and skin him to this thing. There's something called a T-pose. Has anyone heard of the T-pose? It's like for motion capture. It's a calibration routine where you put your arms out and your feet spread apart. And so basically it allows like a motion capture system to calibrate itself to where all the markers are to do motion capture. And it's a lot easier to skin something, like if you're telling vertices to follow this hand, that they're not right next to the hip, and you might accidentally select the hip. So it's basically to get your model and your character out in an easily editable, kind of riggable pose. So you can use some of 3CMX's tools to kind of symmetrically move him. So I'm just changing pivot point. Like I said, I'm just going to go over this real fast and show you guys what it takes to do it. If anyone wants to do something specific, we can kind of work on that individually. So I'm just going to get both of his arms and rotate them out. Alright, so I want them to do it the same degree, so I'm basically told it to rotate around the local axis. So if I rotate one, it's mirrored on the other side and rotate 90 degrees so they rotate out rather than swaying side to side. So I'm just gonna get his arms out, do the same thing here, and get his legs out a little bit. So it's I guess, jumping jack pose. Right? So that's a basic kind of T-pose. And mostly motion capture, you'll see they'll go from this and then they'll start doing whatever action they're going to do, but they always kind of calibrate the system and go, they say, go now, and then they do the motion capture. So a lot of times you'll see them come out of that pose. And that'll give you an idea of like at least dimensions. You can do things like if somebody has really long arms, I can scale both those arms really long, right? So he's got this gigantic forearm. So if anyone wants to make a custom character that's part of telling their story, you can kind of rig them up here. You can kind of make a real simple model and then pose them however you want. All right, so I got my skeleton. He's in there. He's kind of posed. I'm just going to start with a quick box right here. And try to put it up at his shoulders. This is typically where you end up starting when you're modeling a character and trying to get, basically what they look for in all these characters, like quad-based characters, like where everything's a quad and not a triangle. Because that stuff goes to ZBrush where you can paint them really well, and you can do, there's a lot of theories about the topology of the mesh for a character, right? And they usually all start from quad-based models. Sometimes you can't stick with it that way, but so what I'm going to do is split it down the middle. I put a little extra segment, just parametrically in the box. There's little spinners per segment, so I cut it down the middle, and I don't want that to do to both sides the same thing. So what I'll end up doing is put an edit mesh on this, and I'll delete half of this box. So I just have half, right? And it's open in the middle. And then I will put a mirror. There's a mirror command up there. It's the same as Rhino, but one thing you can do in Mirror in 3C Max, I'm not too sure you can do in Rhino, is you can tell it to be an instance. So I can work on one half, and all my work will be mirrored on the other side. Right? So I don't have to do that other side, I can just work on that one half. So I'm going to tell it to be an instance, and you can see I got one box, and the other box just kind of popped on the opposite side there. So now if I say I want to start kind of building out my arm, I'm going to take that face and extrude it and pull it out and scale it, and a couple axes, and then maybe push it back and pull it up. So that's my shoulder, right? My arm's about to come out of there. So I'm just going to start kind of what they call box modeling, fill in and try to match this pose that I'm in. And this is real low resolution. That's usually what you start with. And you just do a move. And typically what you need to do, if you're ever going to model a character, any joint that bends like this, you need more resolution in it, right? So you need like almost a whole other kind of mesh segment in there. So extrude it here. Not much is going to happen unless I want to do like bulging muscles, then I need more resolution, but that can be added later. If anything is going to bend, I'm just going to extrude and extrude again to give that elbow joint. Do the same thing with the knees and probably at the hip. So basically I'm just taking a polygon and extruding it down a couple times, and I can go back and scale and move things afterwards. So if I wanted to move the hand, closer to where the hand is in the top view, you go to the vertex mode. And you see all this stuff should be getting mirrored on that other side because I have that modifier, that instanced mirrored copy there. So I'm just trying to get some basic proportions, not spend a ton of time on it. So you guys get the idea. I can kind of keep going with this. Extrude up the head a couple times, scale it. So I've got this one kind of mirrored mesh, and I can join them together and kind of color it down, put a smoothing thing on it. It'll be kind of like a rough clay sculpture art character person, one of those posable kind of dolls that you get. So at this point, I'll go ahead and open. I'll let you guys open something I did before class, so we don't spend all day watching me box model. Has everyone kind of got the concept idea there? And you guys can basically take your characters from either that populate plugin or the ones that Vulkan's given you, and get your character, get the skeleton, the biped skeleton, and move him to match where they are. As long as they're not doing something like touching their head, it's going to be hard. If their hands are separate from the body, you can try to match it, and then you can kind of repose those characters how you want to. But this is if you wanted to kind of create your own. So I did put on the course folder some materials. If you guys have, you probably don't need the character or the box model character, but biped character you'll need to load some of the stuff. So I put a start and then one with applied. So this is after like 10 more minutes. Right, so here's my real quick character, and just do a little more roughed out face, so it looks more like a face. It should be able to even do stuff like, we'll give you kind of like a rounder form there, right? So the more detail I put in it, and I put a modifier after it, it will kind of smooth it all out. So the next thing to do is I've got a mesh. I've got it matched up pretty well to my skeleton. There's the skin modifier. And so I've added that. It's just in the drop-down list here under skin. Right there. Right. So basically the skin is going to take your mesh and make it a skin, and then try to, if it's matched up really well, it'll do a good job. You won't have to do anything. Right. So I've basically got a skin modifier, and it wants to know what bones I'm using to drive, that I want to drive the skin with. So let me remove these. It's under my folder.
Oh, not here.
It's on the course folder. Did you find it?
Oh, sorry, I was in share.
Yeah, I've got some other stuff in the shared. Yeah, so there's box person and box person mocap. So we're doing the box person one. All right, so I'll show you. Actually, just let me kill that. So this is essentially, I've got it on here. So if I move our character, here, right, nothing happens. He's not moving with it. So that's where the skin modifier, put that on there. And then you just basically, all you should have to do is add all these bones. And when you say add, it'll only select bones in the scene. It won't let you add other things, right? So if you have a biped character in there, it'll automatically sort of, when you hit add, it'll say which ones do you want to add. Not, if you have more than one character, you have to make sure you pick the right one in that scene. We can go ahead and hit select, and then it'll just add them to this list. And then if I grab this fruit again and move it, it should move, my mesh should move with it. And then if I move the hand, the mesh should move with it, right? So now every little bit of that